I am Autumn Reed, 32 years old, a soil biologist living in Napa Valley, California. My job is to listen to the land, analyze dry soil samples, and find ways to bring them back to life. My small laboratory, located on the outskirts of Napa, is always filled with the scent of damp earth and chemicals, a place where I feel at peace among test tubes and microscopes. I'm not the type who enjoys the spotlight or competes for attention. But on that fateful October day at my grandfather's while reading, I was pushed into a play I had never prepared for. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. The meeting room in the law office in downtown Napa was heavy with judgment. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting brilliant but cold patches of light on the polished oak floor. I stood in the corner of the room, near the double doors that still held a faint scent of lemon oil and dust, feeling like an outsider in my own family. My parents, Henry and Evelyn Reed, sat at the long conference table, looking like royalty presiding over court. My mother, in her usual navy blue dress, exuded authority. My father, a retired businessman who once owned a hotel chain, sat with his arms crossed, his eyes cold as if weary of any failure I might bring. They didn't look at me, not even a nod of acknowledgement. All eyes were fixed on my sister, Scarlett Reed, 35 years old, a renowned corporate lawyer in San Francisco. Scarlett was always the center of attention, with her perfectly tailored suit and smug smile as if she already knew the outcome. Next to her stood Ethan Brooks, my husband, a real estate investor. I once thought Ethan was my safe harbor, but that day, he stood beside Scarlett and uttered a word that cut into my heart: useless. Ethan's voice was sharp, as if it were my name rather than an insult. Lawyer Lennox, a middle-aged man with gold-rimmed glasses, had just opened the envelope containing the will. To Scarlett Reed, he declared, pushing a check across the table, a gift worth $10 million, as stated in the original trust fund. The room filled with whispers from distant relatives, but all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. Scarlett smiled, her gaze a silent declaration of victory. Ethan didn't look at me, but his hand brushed Scarlett's, a small gesture, yet enough to drain the warmth from my body, as if the room had turned into an ice cellar. My father spoke, his voice dry. "Earn it yourself, Autumn." That sentence felt like a verdict, as if I were an employee being fired, not his daughter. I stood still, not protesting, not asking why. I had grown used to being compared to Scarlett since I was young. When I was 10, at a Christmas party at home, my mother once pulled me from the corner where I was reading about plants and said, "Why can't you be like Scarlett? Look at your sister, lively, engaging. You're always quiet like a shadow." That sentence etched itself into me like a scar that never healed. Scarlett was always the star, and I was the dull younger sister who preferred playing in the dirt over public speaking. But then, a man in a gray suit, someone I had never noticed, stood up from the corner of the room. His voice was calm, almost amused. "There's one more document." The atmosphere in the room changed, like a cold breeze sweeping through. Scarlett stopped smiling, then clenched his hand. My mother instinctively touched her pearl necklace, a gesture she always made when things slipped out of control. Mr. Lennox, slightly surprised, pulled out an old, worn envelope addressed to me in my grandfather's sharp handwriting. It wasn't the usual legal envelope, it was something aged, like it had been kept for years. "Autumn Reed," he read, and I felt my heart tighten. I recognized that handwriting. As a child, I had seen it on birthday cards my grandfather sent, accompanied by a grape seed and a note: "Plant this, Autumn. Build something they can't tear down." Scarlett scoffed. "What is this? A treasure map?" But I knew it wasn't a joke. I remembered the last day at the Ashwood Vineyard with my grandfather when I was 25. We sat on the porch, the sunset painting the fields gold. He spoke of broken promises and how the family had turned its back on the land. He slipped an envelope into his pocket and said, "One day you'll understand." Mr. Lennox opened the letter, his voice slow but firm. "To Autumn Reed," he began. "If you're hearing this, it means I've had my final word. Your sister and parents will glare, and Ethan, if he's still pretending to be your husband, is probably furious." I heard Scarlett exhale sharply. The letter continued. "I didn't leave money in a trust, not because you're unworthy, but because I knew they'd fight over it like starving wolves. I'm leaving you something else, Ashwood Vineyard, where you learn to listen to the land. And the truth hidden there." Lennox handed me a hand-drawn map with symbols only my grandfather and I understood. The stream behind the shed, the hillside where we tested irrigation, a red circle near the wine cellar door. Beside it was a note, "Show her where it all began." My throat tightened. I remembered those hot summer days, pruning grapes with my grandfather, dirt under our fingernails, him teaching me that everything worthwhile starts with patience. Scarlett stood up abruptly, her voice bitter. "What is this, a piece of old paper and a useless plot of land?" Finn stayed silent, but his eyes revealed panic. I said nothing. I held the map, feeling its weight, knowing this wasn't just a gift, it was a challenge. A few days later, I drove back to Ashwood Vineyard, the familiar road lined with oak trees turning golden red. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and dry leaves. I kept the window open, letting the wind clear the chaos in my mind. Napa Valley always had a way of calming people, with its rolling hills and sunlight shimmering like wine in a glass. But today I didn't feel at ease. I felt like I was stepping onto a battlefield. I stopped the car under the chestnut tree where my grandfather used to sit with his coffee mug and notebook. The two-story house appeared before me, its white paint peeling, the window frames faded. The vineyard behind it stretched far, silent yet full of life, as if waiting for me. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of red soil and dry grass, things I'd known since childhood. The door opened, and my grandmother, Clara Reed, appeared. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her gaze sharp as a blade. "You still remember the way home?" Her voice wasn't angry, it was the disappointment honed by time. "Hi, Grandma," I said, stepping forward, but halted as she continued. "I heard you left, stopped caring, that you found another life." I swallowed hard. "That's not true. I came here in March, knocked on the door, waited 15 minutes. Scarlett said you weren't home." Clara looked at me, her gaze softening but still firm. "I was home all that week, Autumn." That sentence felt like a punch to the gut. Scarlett had lied. Ethan knew. They had deliberately cut me out of my grandfather's final days. She led me inside, the scent of polished wood and cinnamon wafting through like a living memory. I remembered the nights Grandpa sat by the fireplace, humming an old tune, always with his notebook nearby. She brought me into his study, everything still in place, just covered in a thin layer of dust. She handed me a black leather-bound notebook. "He kept calling for you," she said. I opened it and saw my grandfather's familiar handwriting. "Call Autumn. Tell her to come home." But the phone number beside it wasn't mine. "Who gave him this number?" I asked, my hand trembling. Clara pressed her lips together. "Not a coincidence. Someone wanted him to think you didn't care." I sat in the armchair, feeling everything inside me breaking and reshaping. The notebook was full of notes on soil, pH levels, irrigation schedules, but between them were lines about me. Autumn suggested planting cover crops between the grape rows. Smart idea. If I go before I teach her everything, I hope these notes will help. I broke down in tears, not from pain, but from anger. They had stolen my last moments with him. Scarlett, Ethan, and even my parents, they had built a wall of lies. "Grandma, why didn't you call me directly?" I asked, my voice choking. Clara looked out the window where the vineyard stretched wide. I believed them. I thought if Scarlett said you were busy, it must be true. You were always the quiet one, Autumn. I thought life had swept you away. I clutched the notebook. I was never too busy for Grandpa. She turned back, her eyes shining but resolute. He left everything to you because he knew you understood this land. But if you want to keep it, you have to stay. Let it remember you. I nodded, feeling a fire ignite inside me. I wouldn't run, not from the family that tried to erase me, and not from the land that still whispered my name. I stood on the porch of the Ashwood Vineyard house, the morning sunlight filtering through the oak branches, casting shimmering patches of light on the ground. The October air in Napa Valley carried the scent of damp soil and dry leaves, but today it didn't soothe me. Today was the day I would face my family, the ones who had tried to erase my name from my grandfather's legacy. My grandmother, Clara Reed, had summoned them, her voice over the phone sharp as a blade. Henry, Evelyn, Scarlett, and Ethan. Be here in 1 hour. No excuses. She didn't wait for a response, just hung up with a finality that made me shiver. In the kitchen, the smell of cinnamon from the oven and the ticking of the wall clock created a familiar atmosphere, but I felt like I was standing on a grand stage. Clara placed a cup of tea in front of me, the rising steam a reminder that I needed to stay calm. Sit down, she said, her voice low but full of authority. Your grandfather wanted you to hear this, but not alone. I sat on the old wooden chair where he used to preside over harvest meetings. My hand ran across the table's surface, feeling the scratches from years past, as if they were telling the story of this land. Scarlett fears you, she suddenly said, her eyes gazing out the window where the vineyard stretched. Not because you're loud or flashy, but because you listen. You understand the land, understand what matters. They fear that. I gave a faint laugh. If they're afraid, why do they call me useless? She turned back, her gaze sharp. Because lying is easier than facing the truth. But today, the truth will bite them. An hour passed, then another 30 minutes. Creak of the iron gate echoed. From the porch, I saw a black SUV and a silver coupe glide down the gravel path. Scarlett stepped out first, her blonde hair perfectly curled but her eyes tense, as if bracing for a battle. Ethan followed, wearing sunglasses like armor, but his step faltered when he saw me. My parents, Henry and Evelyn, arrived last. My father stood upright, his eyes looking at me like I was a stain on his shirt. My mother clutched her handbag tightly, as if it could shield her from the day ahead. What is this? Scarlett asked, slowly removing her sunglasses. Autumn, are you planning to take over this place? Clara opened the door before I could respond. All of you, come in. They entered, each carrying a different emotion. Scarlett with contempt, Ethan with unease, my mother murmuring about being ambushed, and my father with the gait of someone used to being obeyed. We sat around the large dining table where my grandfather used to sign contracts and sketch harvest plans. His notebook lay in front of me, the hand-drawn map folded neatly in my pocket. My hands no longer trembled. Lawyer Lennox entered, carrying his worn leather briefcase. There's one more letter, he said, his voice calm but weighty. He pulled out a thick envelope, sealed with red wax embossed with the vineyard's symbol, 3 small grape clusters. Mr. Reed requested this be read in front of everyone. He handed the envelope to me. Do you want to read it yourself? I looked around the table, from Scarlett's bitter stare to Ethan's uneasy silence, and shook my head. You read it. Lennox broke the seal and opened the letter with reverence. To my granddaughter, Autumn, he began. If you're hearing this, it means I placed my trust in the right person. You found your way home, not just to the land, but to the truth hidden in it. My mother shifted in her seat. The people in this room may not understand why I did this, Lennox continued, but it was necessary. A legacy belongs to the one who values it, not the ones who expect it. Scarlett has charm, Henry has pride, Evelyn has ambition, and Ethan has calculation. But you, Autumn, have patience, loyalty, and integrity. You stayed with me in the July heat not for money but because you love this land. You asked the right questions. You showed up when everyone else made excuses. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Scarlett clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. Ethan stared at the table as if the floor might swallow him. To the one they called useless, Lennox read on, I leave everything. He folded the letter. The silence lingered, but not for long. Scarlett shot up, her voice trembling with fury. This is a mistake. Autumn knows nothing about managing a vineyard. She's not capable. I looked straight at her. Do you mean I'm not Scarlett? Or Dad? Or whoever you think I need to become to be worthy? Scarlett opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low but sharp. She's right. Autumn, you have no experience. You're just a soil scientist, playing in the dirt all day. I turned to him, a fire rising in my chest. Then why are you afraid, Ethan? Afraid I'll do better than you and Scarlett ever dreamed? He didn't answer, just looked away. My father stood, his voice cold. Enough. We're leaving. But Clara leaned forward, her voice like a scalpel. This is still my home. And you are no longer welcome. My mother opened her mouth to protest, but my father touched her hand. Let's go, Evelyn. They left, one by one, none daring to meet my eyes. Scarlett was the last to go, her eyes flashing something, not regret, but hostility. I knew she hadn't given up. As the door closed, I found a small slip of paper under the table, written in Ethan's handwriting. Autumn, meet me at the cafe on Main Street, 8 p.m. tonight. I need to talk. I clenched the note, unsure whether to tear it or keep it. But I knew one thing, this fight wasn't over. The days after the confrontation, I threw myself into work at Ashwood as a way to keep from drowning in anger. The vineyard stretched before me each morning. The grape rose like silent soldiers waiting for care. I walked through the soil beds, my hand touching the grapevine trunks, feeling the rough bark beneath my fingers. The red soil of Napa Valley clung to my boots, as if reminding me I belonged here, even if my family had tried to erase me. I decided not to meet Ethan that night. His note lay in the desk drawer, but I didn't open it again. Any apology, if it existed, had come too late. Instead, I spent my time reading my grandfather's notebook, every page filled with pH levels, irrigation schedules, and handwritten lines about me. Autumn has a feel for the soil. She'll make it if they give her the chance. Those words burned like a flame, warming me through the coldest nights. One morning, I found an old folder in the wine cellar's safe. Inside were permits, greenhouse blueprints, and my grandfather's research journal on sustainable agriculture. He had dreamed of turning Ashwood into a living lab, where the land not only grew grapes but healed the environment. I called Dr. Lydia Harper, an agricultural expert my grandfather had mentioned. Her voice was warm over the phone. Elliot said you'd call. He believed you could carry on his dream. Lydia arrived at Ashwood a week later, bringing the energy of someone who had devoted her life to the earth. We walked through the vineyard, discussing drought-resistant grape varieties and using cover crops to retain moisture. The soil here is special, Lydia said, crouching down to scoop a handful of red earth. It carries the memory of care. I nodded, recalling my grandfather's words. The soil doesn't lie. It tells the story of those who touched it. We began restoring the greenhouse where my grandfather had once tested soil blends. The air was filled with the scent of damp earth, dry leaves, and old wood, like a greeting from the past. I rehired 2 of the old workers, Maria and Tomas, who had worked alongside him. Maria hugged me, her eyes shimmering. You came back. We thought you were gone for good. I smiled, but my heart was heavy. I didn't know I had to come back until now. The work wasn't easy. The irrigation lines were rusted, the southeast soil was too alkaline, and the budget was tight. There were nights I sat in my grandfather's study under dim lights, wondering if I was strong enough. Painful memories resurfaced, like my 16th birthday, when Scarlett won a public speaking contest and I was merely praised for being good with plants. My mother had said in front of everyone, "Scarlett is the future of this family. Autumn is just a support act." I had hidden in the vineyard afterward, crying by a grapevine until my grandfather found me. "You don't need the spotlight," he said. "You have the land and it's more loyal than anyone." One afternoon, I received an email from Ethan. Subject: "Give me a chance." I hesitated, then opened it. He wrote that he regretted everything, that he had been pressured by Scarlett and my father, that he never expected my grandfather would choose me. "I still love you, Autumn. Please meet me, let me explain." I deleted the email, but his words haunted me. Love? That was love, I didn't want it. Meanwhile, I heard Scarlett had contacted a group of investors, hoping to buy part of Ashwood. An old friend, Nate, who worked in real estate, warned me. "She's saying you can't manage the vineyard, that you'll fail. They're just waiting for a chance to take it." I clenched my fists, feeling like Scarlett was still playing a game I hadn't been invited to. Lydia and I started developing a new grape variety, naming it Clara Blue in honor of my grandmother. It was drought-resistant, its roots digging deep into the soil, just like Clara stood firm against the family. One evening, I stood at the vineyard's edge, watching the sunset bathe the grape rows in gold. I felt my grandfather somewhere nearby, smiling. But I also knew Scarlett wasn't done. The battle for Ashwood had only just begun. 3 years had passed since the will reading, and Ashwood had become a beacon of hope. The vineyard was now a center for sustainable agricultural research, with rows of Clara Blue grapes flourishing under the Napa Valley sun. I, Autumn Reed, was no longer the girl once called useless. I was the leader, heading projects with Dr. Lydia Harper, hosting workshops for young farmers, and proving that land can heal if it's loved. One April morning, I was testing soil in the east section when I heard a car stop at the gate. Scarlett Reed, my sister, stepped out of an old sedan, no longer glamorous as before. Her blonde hair was dull, her eyes weary instead of proud. "Autumn," she said softly. "I want talk." I led her to the bench under the oak tree where our grandfather used to sit. "What do you want?" I asked bluntly. "I want to work here," Scarlett said. "I've lost everything, my job, my home. I want to start over." I looked at her, remembering years of comparisons and belittlement. Part of me wanted to send her away, but my grandfather's words echoed. "Everyone deserves a chance." I took her to the compost area, where the air was thick with the smell of soil and fertilizer. "Start here. 4 hours a day, no skipping. If you lie, you're done." Scarlett nodded, taking the shovel I handed her. But a few weeks later, I found out she had contacted an old investor, plotting to convince them I wasn't capable of managing Ashwood. Nate, my friend, messaged me. "Scarlett is meeting with someone from a major wine company. They want to buy the land." I confronted her in the greenhouse. "You haven't given up, have you?" Scarlett turned pale. "I was just trying to help. You don't understand the pressure of running this place." I cut her off. "Helping by selling Grandpa's legacy? Leave or stay and do the work right." Scarlett chose to stay, bowing her head and working in the compost area. I didn't forgive her, but I gave her a chance, not for her, but for Grandpa. In the fall of 2025, Ashwood was more vibrant than ever. The vineyard rows stretched far, red soil fertile under the Napa sun. The vine program, my grandfather's dream, was now a renowned sustainable agriculture model, partnering with farms in California, Texas, and even Spain. Clara Blue, the drought-resistant grape variety, was praised in agricultural journals. I, Autumn Reed, stood in the field, no longer the girl once called useless. I was the heir, the builder. One morning, I received a letter from a university, inviting me to accept an honorary doctorate for contributions to sustainable farming. I held the ceremony right at Ashwood, beneath the oak tree, no stage, just the earth and the people I loved. Clara sat on the porch, pride in her eyes. Lydia Harper stood beside me, smiling like a mother. When they called my name, I didn't think of victory or revenge, but of Grandpa, his rough hands, laughter in the wine cellar, and the faith he had in me. Scarlett still worked in the compost area, quietly, with no more schemes. One day, she stood beside me in the southern field, her gaze softened. "I was wrong, Autumn. You're stronger than I thought." I didn't reply, only nodded. Pain between us still existed, but it no longer controlled me. Ethan sent another letter, apologizing and begging to come back. I burned it in the fireplace without reading it fully. He, my parents in Florida, and their hurtful words were now just the past. I walked through the field, my hand touching the soil, feeling its warmth. A stone marker had been placed near the greenhouse, engraved with my grandfather's words. "Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you plant when no one's watching." Below it was my name, Autumn. I stood there under the glittering stars, knowing they had tried to bury me in shame and betrayal, but I had risen, not for revenge, but to live true to myself. Ashwood wasn't just a vineyard, it was home, a legacy, the place where I found myself. I stand in the middle of Ashwood Vineyard, under the golden sunlight of Napa Valley, where the land has taught me more than any book or lecture ever could. My journey, from a girl once called useless to the heir of my grandfather's legacy, is not just a story about land, but about the strength within each of us. Here are 5 lessons I want to share with you, those who are listening. First, your worth is not defined by what others say. My family once saw me as Scarlett's shadow, but my grandfather saw what they couldn't: patience and loyalty. Don't let hurtful words define you. Believe in your own value. Second, true legacy is what you plant. My grandfather taught me that legacy isn't about money or fame, but about what you build with love and effort, even when no one's watching. Plant good seeds, no matter how small. Third, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I gave Scarlett a chance to start over, not because I forgot the betrayal, but because I chose not to let it hold me back. Forgiveness is how you free yourself. Fourth, land and people both need care. Ashwood came back to life because I listened to it, just as I learned to listen to myself. Take time to nurture what matters to you. Fifth, you are stronger than you think. I once doubted myself, but every step on this land helped me discover my strength. You have that strength too, you just have to take the step. If my story has touched you, if you found inspiration in Ashwood's journey, please like, share, and subscribe to support stories of resilience and hope. Every share is a seed, helping this story grow just like I've replanted Ashwood. Thank you for walking this journey with me.